for months, even before the latest confrontation began. But the Lebanese state refused to do that, saying that they will continue discussions with Israel within the framework of a ceasefire monitoring committee. So now Lebanon offering this, but yet this offer has been met with silence. No comment from any U.S. official, even no comment from Israel, with many here fearing that Israel is pushing for a military solution or an unconditional surrender. All the while, Hezbollah remains as defiant, saying that it will continue to fight, it will continue to resist because it has no other choice. Those were the words that Mohammed Raad, Hezbollah's head of the Hezbollah's parliamentary delegation, said. He also said the offer that is being given to them is not war or peace. The offer that is being given to them is war or surrender under what he called humiliating terms, which Hezbollah will not accept. So no serious mediation offer on the table. We are now in week 2 of these ongoing confrontations, with the death toll only rising. Nearly 500 people killed since the start.
Zaina Khodr live for us in Lebanon. Thank you, Zaina. Lebanon's largest stadium, meanwhile, has been transformed into a center to house displaced people. The government and aid groups are struggling to find enough shelter for the hundreds of thousands of people forced from their homes. Bernard Smith reports from Beirut.
Lebanon's government is struggling to meet the demand for emergency shelter. This stadium is being converted into a mini tent city, but there aren't enough tents to meet the enormous demand. There are 800 people in here so far, including Marwa El-Shalak, who is heavily pregnant and can give birth at any moment, but their home's been totally destroyed and they've been left sheltering here.
We were staying in the southern suburbs. The strike started suddenly during the night, around 3 a.m. We took a car and went to central Beirut, and then some people brought us here to the sports city. Our situation is very difficult. I could give birth at any moment, and I'm very worried about how I'm supposed to stay in a tent in this kind of weather.
The UN estimates almost 700,000 people have been internally displaced, and most of them are living in either hotels, private rented accommodation, or staying with friends. And those that don't have those options, those that don't have the means to rent or pay for hotels, are in government shelters like this, and there is enormous need. And those that are here could be here now for many more weeks or even months to come. Bernard Smith, Al Jazeera, Beirut.
You're watching Al Jazeera. It's the 11th day of the U.S.-Israel war on Iran, a conflict that has already spread to large parts of the Middle East and is threatening global fuel supplies. Iran's Revolutionary Guard has rejected comments by U.S. President Trump suggesting that the war will end soon. The Guard has dismissed his comments as nonsense, saying it's up to Iran to determine the end of the war. The exchange of words comes as people in Iran endure some of the most intense bombardment overnight. Emergency crews are still searching the rubble in Tehran. State media says about 40 people were killed in one attack. Global markets have shown signs of rebounding. Investors are optimistic the war on Iran could end soon following comments from the U.S. president. Early trading shows a dip in oil prices has helped Asian markets. Saudi Arabia's oil giant Aramco has warned there could be catastrophic consequences for the world's oil markets the longer the disruption of the Strait of Hormuz goes on. President Trump has warned that Iran will be hit, quote, 20 times harder if it stops the flow of oil through the strait. The area is a transit point for 20% of the world's oil and gas. Kulsum Sharif explains.
Since the start of the conflict, some of the major oil and gas producers in the Middle East have halted production one by one. So oil exports have abruptly stopped right from Qatar to Iraq due to attacks on energy infrastructure. Now, nearly half of the world's oil reserves and production comes from this region. Now, Saudi Arabia is a leading exporter. Now, this image should explain why it was forced to halt production at one of its biggest domestic oil refinery, Ras Tanura. Debris from intercepted Iranian drone caused a fire here. Now, apart from crude oil exports, The Middle East is also a powerhouse when it comes to liquefied natural gas. Now, Qatar is a leading producer, supplying nearly 20% of global LNG. Now, it operates a field along with Iran. Now, this is South Pass North Dome field. Now, the south portion of it is operated by Qatar and the northern part of it by Iran. But production has completely stopped here. Even if production were to continue, we have another problem, the problem of transportation, because the Iranian threats have effectively shut the Strait of Hormuz. So all the oil and gas that has been produced in the region is not being supplied through. Normally, most of the supplies go through the Strait of Hormuz to Asia, but some of them also to Europe, right up from the Arabian Sea and through the Suez Canal. Now, the closure of the strait has already pushed up oil and gas prices. And the world has actually seen that play out after Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Now, stock markets have slumped, oil prices have jumped right from Asia to America.
Vanda Nahari is the founder and CEO of Vanda Insights, a company that analyzes the global energy market. She says the closure of the Strait of Hormuz is becoming a growing problem for oil markets.
I'm surprised that it took this long for any company to stand up and say that. It's been as clear as daylight. We are already into the second week of the closure of Hormuz. What you see on headline crude prices, of course, gets talked about, but such a long chain of ripple effect is already passing through all the way down to petrochemicals. We have a lot of force measures being declared by companies all over the world. I mean, this has already become a big mess. Even if things start going back to normal very quickly, and right about now, we could still be suffering the ripple effect of this for weeks, if not months. The countries in where the output is being shut, which is the Persian Gulf countries, most of it has been shut in Iraq, to some extent in Kuwait, and I believe in Saudi Arabia, Bahrain. This can be resumed fairly quickly, provided that exports, once they resume at normal, resume as per normal, the sailings, that they continue at normal rates. Because, at this point, we can't even guarantee that. What is the ramp up back to normalcy? But as and when exports are normal, I would expect the production to return to normal within days. That's not a major concern. The major concern right now is, of course, the Strait of Hormuz still remains shut, despite everything that President Trump said last night.
Several strikes have been reported in northern Iraq. One of them hit a camp hosting fighters from the Iranian-backed Popular Mobilization Forces near the city of Kirkuk. Iraq has faced frequent attacks since the conflict in the Middle East began last week. Our correspondent Asad Beg has the latest from Erbil in northern Iraq.
Iraq is seeing multiple cities attacked overnight, just highlighting how this widening regional conflict is being played out here on Iraqi territory. Now, you've been talking about Kirkuk. Let's talk about that northern city. We understand there's been 2 strikes, at least 6 people killed, 20 injured on the 40th Brigade of the Popular Mobilization Forces. Now, we don't know who carried out that attack, but the Popular Mobilization Forces are linked to the Iraqi military, and some factions within that are aligned to Iran. Now, here in the Kurdistan region, there have been strikes on Erbil, and the authorities say that 5 drones targeted the city of Erbil. They say all of those were intercepted and shot down. From one of those drones, a debris hit near the United Arab Emirates consulate. Authorities say no one was injured or killed in that attack. Now, elsewhere in Iraq, a security source told Al Jazeera a drone targeted a US logistics camp near Baghdad airport. Meanwhile, a group calling itself the Islamic Resistance of Iraq, they say they've carried out 37 operations in the last 24 hours, targeting what they describe as enemy bases in the region.
The Turkish Defense Ministry says it will not hesitate to act if its airspace or territory are threatened. The comments come after a second missile was down near Turkey. In a statement, the ministry says a ballistic missile launched from Iran and detected heading towards Turkey was intercepted and neutralized by NATO air and missile defense systems. No casualties or damage were reported. Turkish institutions began monitoring the incident immediately. Ankara emphasized its capability and determination to protect national airspace and border security, while warning that further escalation in the region must be avoided. Sinem Kosolu has more from Istanbul.
This missile incident is definitely a balancing act for Turkey, as Turkey and Iran are neighbors sharing a 534 kilometers of borders that were drawn in the 17th century. No fights, no wars since then, but also Turkey is a NATO ally. It's a NATO country with the second largest military, and according to NATO, any attack targeting a NATO country would be considered an attack targeting all other NATO countries. However, so far, 2 missiles reached Turkish soil. They were intercepted in the atmosphere by the U.S. air defense system in the eastern Mediterranean. The Iranian side has been saying that that was an accident. The rockets were not targeting Turkey. Turkey made the necessary warnings, and we heard Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan on Monday saying that they made the necessary warnings to the Iranian side. But however, according to Turkish Foreign Ministry especially, how far these accidents will happen is an important matter. But definitely Turkey doesn't want any destabilization in the region. Turkey doesn't want any destabilization within Iran, and Turkey supports the territorial integrity in the region, all neighbors, all countries. Sinem Kosolu, Al Jazeera, Istanbul.
France's president has pledged to defend Cyprus and deploy more warships to the eastern Mediterranean. Emmanuel Macron and Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis visited the island on Monday. Earlier this month, a drone caused minor damage at a British base in Cyprus, while other drones were intercepted. John Saropoulos reports from Paphos.
France declared its presence unmistakably, with the French presidential aircraft's arrival on Cyprus and the presence of its frigate and the Charles de Gaulle aircraft carrier nearby. Together with the Greek Prime Minister, President Emmanuel Macron was claiming European primacy in the eastern Mediterranean.
Coming here with the Greek Prime Minister, I want to say that an attack on Cyprus is an attack on Europe. And the defence of Cyprus is a vital issue for your neighbour and friend Greece. But it is also a vital issue for France and for Europe.
Greece was the first mover, sending 2 frigates and 4 F-16s within 24 hours of a Shahed-type drone striking the British military base at Akrotiri. That has triggered a European response. The leaders of Greece and Cyprus came to deliver messages of solidarity and autonomy, that the security of Cyprus is the security of Europe, and that Europe is capable of providing for its own security. That European presence here is set to grow in the coming days with the arrival of ships from Italy and Spain, because, as the French president said, its credibility is crucial for achieving de-escalation. Both leaders strongly support European defence autonomy, and a new report from the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute on Monday revealed that Europe is moving in the right direction. It increased its arms exports by 36% in the last 5 years, faster than any other region, and now owns 28% of the world's export market for weapons. France, with its Rafale fighter jet and missile systems, leads European exporters, something showcased here with a French helicopter bought by Cyprus. And a state-of-the-art frigate Greece sent here was just delivered from French shipyards. But the ideological message was equally important.
It's an initiative that in practice breathes new life into this article of the treaty. Because if not now, when? If we don't act together in such a crisis, how will we face possible future crises? Now is the time to make it clear that every inch of European territory cannot be violated.
And so is the economic message of this high-profile visit, that Europe will keep waterways open for international trade and energy flows. After Russia's war in Ukraine and decades of wars in the Middle East, it is determined to protect its economy from inflation. The subtext of this camaraderie among Europeans is not just that Europe doesn't need the security assistance of the United States, but that the United States has now become part of the problem rather than the solution. John Psaropoulos, Al Jazeera, Paphos Air Force Base, Cyprus.
Thousands of Afghans living in Iran are fleeing across the border because of the attacks by the U.S. and Israel. According to the UN, between 3 and 5 million Afghans live in Iran. About 2,000 are crossing the border every day to seek safety. Many of them have been repeatedly displaced by decades of conflict. Arafat Jamal is a representative of the UN's refugee agency in Afghanistan. He says there are no good choices for Afghans deciding whether to remain in Iran.
What we've seen is about 110,000 have crossed over this year. What I would say is that they're reporting that they are fleeing the conditions of war that all people inside Iran are experiencing. They are not at this point highlighting any specific concerns for Afghans. However, what we're witnessing here is a lot of tension and apprehension. This is just the beginning, and the repercussions of this conflict are being felt throughout the region. Of course, for these people, there are no good choices. They're fleeing one war and coming to another, because I'm sure your viewers remember that we here in Afghanistan are experiencing a second war, a war that predated the one in Iran between Pakistan and Afghanistan. So they're fleeing one conflict and entering another one at the moment. This is coming on the back of a mass movement of people last year. Last year, the movement of Afghans back to Afghanistan, 2.8 million, was the largest such movement globally. So now, as we start this year, it's picking up again, and we are seeing refugees, we are seeing migrants, we are seeing passport holders, and so on. And at the moment, it seems to be more of a preemptive move. People are describing bombs on them, a great deal of fear, but they're also describing a dysfunctional economy where these people who filled in many of the different slots in the labor market are unable to find jobs.
The conflict in the Middle East is global news, but on U.S. television, it's being told through a very divided lens. The big cable news networks, which rely on advertising dollars, need to keep their audiences happy, and that's visible when you see how different their takes are. Phil Lavelle explains.
War is raging in Iran and on the US airwaves too. The media reporting it in different ways, something President Trump is always laser focused on.
But all we have really over here is the fake news.
Fake news.
They are the enemy of the people.
He's not a fan. He doesn't like the big free-to-air networks.
You're with who?
ABC News, sir.
Fake news. ABC fake news. One of the worst in the business.
But it's the cable channels with their looser restrictions and their enormous viewerships that he often raves or rages about. And they are giving very different perspectives on the story. To the left, the likes of MS Now, highly critical of him and his policies.
Maybe it's for oil, as the president daydreams himself into another 19th century war fantasy of conquering some foreign land he doesn't understand or care about, but he would like to rob them of their natural resources.
To the right, Newsmax and his favourite Fox News, which he often calls into.
Mr. Trump, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Generally offering full-throated support.
He's dealing with it head-on, whereas other presidents, other administrations, they would prefer to kick the can down the road, let somebody else deal with it. This president is not that kind of guy. He's going to deal with it now.
And how the audience feels on Iran, well, that largely depends on how they vote. Just look at this poll from the Washington Post. 81% of Republicans support the war, 91% of Democrats oppose it. Now, the administration has long decried the way stories are being told in the media.
The press does only want to make the president look bad. That's a fact, especially you.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has gone from being a Fox News host to running the military with little time for his former colleagues.
Jennifer, you've been about the worst, the one who misrepresents the most intentionally what the president says.
Even bringing in tough new restrictions for journalists at the Pentagon, deemed so severe that many gave their press credentials back rather than agree to them. And now those spaces taken by pro-Trump networks. And trust in the media, only 28% among younger Americans. They are being targeted by a social media savvy, meme-ready White House. Just take a look at this video posted on X. The war in Iran mixed with a video game, something similar to Call of Duty. One war, many stories, and it all depends on what channel you're watching. Phil Lavelle, Al Jazeera, Washington.
5 Iranian women footballers have been granted asylum in Australia. They're part of the national team taking part in the Asian Cup. The announcement follows days of lobbying by rights groups, including a protest outside the team's hotel. There were concerns for players' safety after they refused to sing the national anthem ahead of their match against South Korea. The women were branded traitors on Iranian state television for their defiance. Now let's take a look at some of the day's other news. In Gaza, Israeli artillery shelling has been reported in Khan Yunis and the center of the Strip. Palestinian officials say at least 6 people have been killed in Israeli strikes, including 3 children and a journalist. Some of the attacks hit makeshift shelters housing displaced families. More than 640 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli fire since a U.S.-brokered ceasefire came into effect in October. Crossings into Gaza remain largely closed. Aid supplies are scarce, and basic goods are beginning to disappear from local markets. Our correspondent Hind Huduri has the latest from Gaza City.
The past 24 hours, at least 7 Palestinians have been killed. There were a couple of airstrikes in different areas across the Gaza Strip, in the eastern parts of Khan Yunis, in Abasan, in Nusayrat, and also in the Gaza City, in the northern parts of the Gaza City. And a journalist has been killed. 3 Palestinian children were also killed. And this makes the death toll of Palestinians killed since the beginning of the ceasefire to 648. There has been more than 1,000 violations committed since the ceasefire has took place, and every single day, even when the war between Israel and Iran started, there has been relentless explosions every single night, either from bulldozers destroying lands and residential areas beyond the yellow line, or from the warships and the naval ships in the sea. So there has been no quietness across the Gaza Strip, despite the fact that Israel is busy with something else.
A corruption trial has begun for Istanbul's jailed mayor, Ekrem İmamoğlu. He was arrested last March after being named the main opposition challenger to Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. İmamoğlu's supporters and human rights groups say the case is politically motivated. Prosecutors are seeking a prison sentence that could exceed 2,400 years. In Argentina, thousands of women have taken part in demonstrations saying that their rights are under threat. President Javier Milei used International Women's Day to criticize the gender policies of the previous government. Teresa Bo reports from Buenos Aires.
This is what the main street in front of Argentina's Congress looks like, as thousands of women have taken to the streets to mark International Women's Day. Human rights organizations here have told us that women rights groups in this country were once a point of pride, but now they have become a political battleground since President Javier Milei came to power in 2024.
As part of his austerity plan, Milei has implemented significant cuts to programs and institutions related to gender policies and women's rights. Milei says he's dismantling an oversized state to jumpstart this country's economy. But these measures have been criticized by the United Nations and human rights groups.
I think that the financing of many programs was already scarce, but at least there was a policy and consensus that it was important. Now they are questioning that, and that's why we are here.
Argentina legalized abortion in 2020, but Javier Milei has said Argentine society should reconsider the law and even discuss the possibility of a national referendum. Women rights groups also say there's a femicide in Argentina every 25 hours. Malena Maidana was 26 years old and was killed in Buenos Aires in February. Her family was part of the demonstration on Monday.
Her killer is in prison, but we want to make sure he won't be released. That's why we are marching now.
For years, Argentina was a regional leader in women's rights. But women here say that the fight right now is no longer about advancing those rights, but defending the ones they already won. Teresa Bo, Al Jazeera, Buenos Aires.
Artificial intelligence company Anthropic is suing the administration of Donald Trump after being placed on a U.S. national security blacklist. Last week, the Pentagon labeled the company a supply chain risk, a move that restricts its use by government contractors. The decision followed Anthropic's refusal to remove safeguards that prevent its AI from being used for autonomous weapons or domestic surveillance. A security crisis in northern Nigeria is tearing apart rural communities. Dozens of civilians and soldiers have been killed in recent months as armed gangs raid villages and kidnap civilians. All right, let's listen now to Qatar's foreign ministry spokesman.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this briefing where we will follow the development in the region and the Qatar diplomatic movement. As you have heard during the last few days, Qatar has received international 75 calls from leaders and ministers from the concerned world, and where they both discussed the situation in the region, and they have also concentrated on the ways of dealing with the threats that are as a result of the Iranian threats to the region and the war between Iran and the US and Israel. Within the framework of the diplomatic moves, Prime Minister, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani, presided the Qatari delegation to the leaders of the GCC and Egypt and Jordan and Syria and Iraq and Lebanon and Turkey, Armenia, European Union. And during this summer, they have discussed the military escalation in the region and the threats on the regional and the international peace and ways of returning back to the negotiating table through peaceful means. And Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani has delivered a speech that included a condemnation to the attacks against the state of Qatar and the direct threat to the security in the state of Qatar. He also praised the role of the Qatari armed forces in intercepting the missiles and drones, and also confirmed the ability of the country to defend its people, the residents, the citizens, and the vital establishment and vital installations. And the sovereignty of these countries of the GCC are very important to everyone. He also stressed the solidarity of the state of Qatar in all these countries and their steps to defend their sovereignty and their stability. He also pointed out that the attacks will hurt the principles of mediation and negotiations, and he praised also the role of the Sultanate of Oman and the cooperation between the EU and the state of Qatar and the GCC, and the importance of safeguarding the peace and security in the region. He also, Sultan bin Saad al-Mriki, Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, have presided over the Qatar delegation to the Arab League meeting, the ministerial meeting, through the visual. And the state of Qatar has issued certain statements during the last few days. The state of Qatar has condemned on Friday the attacks of Iran against Bahrain, and also Qatar expressed on Sunday its condemnation, severe condemnation to the Iran attacks against housing establishment in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The Qatar statement also condemned all the justifications used and the pretexts and the claims of Iran in this regard. At the same context, the state of Qatar has sent a message to Antonio Guterres, the UN Secretary General, and Michael Walsh, the U.S. Permanent Representative to the United Nations, regarding the situation in the Middle East and the attacks of Iran against the state of Qatar. The message was delivered by the Qatari Permanent Representative to the United Nations, Sheikh Ali bin Ahmed Qatar. This all what I have, and you have any more questions, I'm ready for that. Question from Al Jazeera. Are there any direct contacts with the Iranians, and how have you dealt with the apology made by the Iranian president and the military threats after that? Thank you very much, Farah, for your question. Regarding what you've said about the contacts between Qatar and the Iranians, as you know, Prime Minister, Minister of Foreign Affairs has contacts with the Iranian Foreign Minister. This was the only contact since the start of the war. I'm not going that we don't have contacts, but we have contacts. But mainly right now, we need to defend our country. We concentrate on defending our country, our territories. Regarding what has been said by the Iranian president, as he said, we were all optimistic. It includes an apology and a commitment not to attack any territories of the Arab countries that have nothing to do with this war. But 10 minutes after this statement and this apology, we have seen an attack against the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain as well. And after that, on the same day, there was an attack against the state of Qatar. At the same time, the GCC countries were preparing a joint communique or statement in response to the Iranian president's statement, but the Iranian president's statement were not translated on the ground, and there was no need to issue this statement. For us, we will defend our country. We will continue defending our country. Qatar was not a part of this war. We were very clear on that sphere. We were rejecting to be part of this war. We reject our territories to be used as a platform to attack any other country, and we still believe that diplomacy is the best choice and the optimum choice for everyone to deal with the situation. Any aggression on the state of Qatar is aggression on our sovereignty, and our response will be equal. Peace be upon you. A question from the Qatar News Agency. The country now and Qatar are seeking to de-escalate the situation through certain signals and inviting the concerned parties to the negotiating table. What do you think? This question must be directed to the parties of the dispute. And for us in the state of Qatar, we were always saying the same thing. Every crisis must be sorted out through negotiating table. Every practice that comes within the escalation of the dispute must be sorted out through talks and dialogue. Wars will never go on forever. There were no victory forever or defeat forever, and everything must be sorted out through the negotiating table. And we have been calling on this. For the time being, the state of Qatar is under a daily attack within this war from the Iranian side, and we cannot talk in these circumstances about a role or mediation or sorting out disputes through peaceful means. The aggression must stop, the attacks must stop, but anyhow, contacts are still ongoing with other parties. We need to guarantee that there must be a way to sort out this crisis and this matter. Thank you. A question from TASS News Agency. Within the attacks of Iran against the state of Qatar, is Qatar thinking of certain financial procedures and economic procedures with the GCC countries? As you know, for us, these attacks are affecting not only the economy of Qatar, but the global economy, and we were forced because of these attacks to, as mentioned by Qatar Energy, to halt the production after attacking Ras Laffan. This is the first time ever for the state of Qatar to happen, but the impacts will be affecting the area, the global economy, and so many domains and so many spheres will be affected. Aviation and other parts, other domains will be affected greatly in the coming period. That's why we have adopted all the national procedures to make sure that our economy will stay solid in the face of these challenges. And as mentioned by His Excellency the Minister of Energy in his interview with the Financial Times, he said we are committed to our clients, but the circumstances in the region have led us to this case and to this state. The circumstances must be removed in order for the economy to come back to normal. Dealing with these problems necessitates that we first should face and abort these attacks through the great efforts of the Qatari armed forces, and thank God for the time being we haven't seen any real attacks or real damage on the ground. Yes, there is damage, but with the grace of Allah, security is still there, and every circumstances are for our sake, the sake of our citizens and the residents. We will continue defending our country. This is the main thing now.
مرحبا دكتور ماجد. مرة أخرى الميكروفون الصوت غير واضح. الصوت غير واضح. هل تشعر قطر أن شيء من التفاؤل والاتجاه نحو خفض التصعيد بناء على التصريحات الصادرة حديثا من الجانبين؟ وهل هناك أي معلومات بشأن ذلك؟ وأيضا هل هناك معلومات إضافية حول الأهداف التي تم التصدي أهداف الاعتداءات التي تم التصدي لها، وهل هناك أي معلومات حول أي خسائر
regarding any civil damage in the state of Qatar?
وفيما يتعلق بمنشآت الغاز.
So let me answer that second question. You've been seeing the statements by the Qatari armed forces on the attacks that have been taking place on Qatar, especially in the last 2 days. The majority of these attacks, as I have said, were targeting Qatari. I mean, all of them were targeting our sovereignty. We are not prepared right now to discuss every attack and where the target was, but what I can assure you is that the targets on civilian infrastructure still continue. And therefore, we urge the international community to use all its capacity to make sure that these attacks on our sovereignty here in Qatar and in the region stop immediately. And we rebuke any justification that the Iranians are offering for this attack. This is an attack on our sovereignty, an attack on our people, an attack on our economy, an attack on our infrastructure and vital infrastructure. And therefore, this is not to be accepted and will be dealt with accordingly. Regarding the possibility of mediation right now, I think you don't need my answer for that question. You have all the parties basically saying what they think about this yesterday in various statements. I will confirm again that from our part here in Qatar, we have always believed that any conflict would only end on a negotiation table. And however difficult the situation right now is, the end of this conflict will be on a negotiation table. And therefore, the quicker we get to that negotiation table, end the escalation, stop the attacks on our countries and our peoples, the better it is for the people of the region and international peace and security and international economy. Yes?
نعم.
Can we know the fate of the crew of the 2 aircraft that has been robbed? And have you been in contact with Russia regarding any mediation in this connection? And have you made any steps? I have no idea about the fate. As we said last week, Qatari teams are searching, but I don't have any new information. Contacts are ongoing with Russia. I don't have any idea about a certain contact regarding mediation. We have heard these statements, but any role that will lead to the de-escalation of the situation will be welcomed by everyone.
No, you. أنت يا أخي.
شكرا دكتور.
انت متنازل عن سؤالك شو تفضل.
مقبول خلاف الكيو ام سي الاذاعه الاسبانيه.
Question from Spanish radio. I have two questions within the escalation in the region. How can you develop the diplomatic contacts with the international and regional partners to keep the stability and security? Another question, is the Qatari diplomacy heading towards launching new initiative for the sake of de-escalation, or your priority now is to deal with the crisis? I don't know about which calmness you talk, but with the coordination with our partners, as you heard, we had daily contacts, probably more than once, every day with our regional and international partners, and we appreciate very much the contacts of and calls of solidarity from different countries and the procedures that has followed through the defensive support and the cooperation in so many other domains. The coordination is going on, and there are so many calls and contacts between the leaders on a daily basis because everyone understands how serious the situation on the stability and security of the region and on the global security. The leaders of our region are doing a great job in order to de-escalate and to stop the situation and to stop the aggression against our countries. Regarding the ongoing initiative, as you've said, we are hearing from here or there about these efforts, and we see that whatsoever this war will take time, we need to sort out everything through talks.
You need a mic.
Thank you very much. Qatar relies a lot on desalination plants for getting water, and some other countries in the region have been targeted. In Bahrain, for example, the desalination plants have been targeted. How do you ensure the safety of those infrastructures in Qatar?
Well, first of all, let me say with a very clear voice, targeting vital infrastructure, whether it be water desalination facilities, water tanks, food reserves, medicine reserves or medicine production facilities, any kind of infrastructure that is what sustains people's lives is a grave danger for the people of the region and beyond. Whether this is, whatever party is doing this, this needs to stop immediately. This region cannot take these kind of attacks on its facilities. We will see a humanitarian catastrophe as a result of these attacks. We've seen these attacks in both sides of the Gulf. They have affected people's lives immediately, and people, civilian people in cities should not be targeted in any war, in any conflict, in any way, and this is the worst way to attack them, which is not to not only to target civilian individuals, but to make life impossible through targeting the vital infrastructure that sustains and supports these people. We have taken all precautions in Qatar. From a military perspective, as you have seen, most of these attacks, almost all of these attacks have been deterred, and we have not had any successful attacks on our civilian infrastructure, especially on that civilian infrastructure that sustains people's lives. And we urge all parties to take immediate action to halt any attacks that would cause damage to these facilities and this infrastructure. Also, from our point of view, the attacks on energy facilities that has happened also on both sides is a dangerous precedent that will cause not only the region to lose economically and in our business models here in the region, but it will cause repercussions throughout the world. The ripple effects of attacking the energy facilities in this region, the ripple effects of blocking maritime navigation that's taking place right now. It will be felt across the world. This is not something that will be confined to this region. And we urge the international community to do all that is possible to urge all the parties of the conflict to stop attacking or harming these facilities And for us in the region, we have taken as I said, all possible precautions to make sure that that doesn't happen, including, of course, halting production and minimizing production in other areas to make sure that the safety of the people who are working in these facilities is of paramount importance to us, but also to make sure that the facilities are safe and the production is safe for the future. And as soon as the situation that has put us in or caused this disruption ends, we will go back to supplying the international community and our clients and working with them very closely to make sure that the effects of these attacks are not strategic. But I have to warn that what is happening right now is going to have grave consequences for the international economy. Fadal. Mike Warak.
Hi, Dr. Majid. Adil Halim from Euronews. You mentioned the joint GCC-EU virtual summit. How does the ministry assess European participation in regional defense and security so far? And secondly, in January, you mentioned right here, you warned that further escalation could have catastrophic results in the region and beyond. Did you envision it would come to this?
First of all, as the Prime Minister has said yesterday in the meeting, we highly appreciate the European partnership in this. We have seen the Typhoon aircrafts in the joint squadron with the United Kingdom and their efficacy in defending our region. We have seen, of course, the same support come in from other European countries, including France and Italy and others, and it is hugely appreciated. I think the partnership between Europe and the GCC has proven its worth in this crisis, and we, again, highly appreciate the sincerity of these relationships and the constant coordination and calls happening between the leaders of the EU and the leaders of the GCC and the Arab countries affected. And this is what partnership is. And this is a time, when you know your friends and the worth of the friendship and the partnership that you have with them. And I think Europe has proven its worth many times during this conflict. But we still, of course, are coordinating with all the international community partners to make sure that we are on the same page on a lot of these issues on how to work to deter all of these attacks that are taking place. As you rightly have mentioned, we have warned in Qatar for many years now that escalation left unchecked in the region would lead to catastrophic results. We are at that moment where we are seeing the catastrophic results across the region. Right now, as we speak, you can put a map of the region in front of you, and you will not be able to find a finger-pointing space where escalation is not happening. This is exactly what we have said from day one. This is the biggest I told you so in the history of I told you so's in the world. We have said from day one, left unchecked, the escalation that started in 2023 would lead to a regional war. What we are seeing right now is a regional war that still can be contained, but the trajectory we are going through right now is a very dangerous trajectory for the region, and we keep warning that, again, this left unchecked and conflict moved from negotiation rooms to battlefields will lead to even more catastrophic results for the people of the region. Please. Mm-hmm. No, the mic is in front of you. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Majid. Just to clarify, when you were saying that on both sides there was civilians' infrastructure being hit and shouldn't be, is that a message you've been telegraphing quite directly to the United States, asking them to hold back in the sense where civilian infrastructure is being hit? And President Trump, secondly, said yesterday that he believed, or the Americans believed, that Iran was ready to strike its neighbors, which is why the U.S. intervened. So what is Qatar's view with the Iranians have attacked if the U.S. and Israel had not? And then just finally, what is Qatar's response to the appointment or the selection of Moshtaba Khamenei? I see only Oman and Iraq have responded officially to the new leader in Iran. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, regarding attacks on civilians, categorically, it's very clear from our position. Any party that targets civilian infrastructure, we are urging them to stop that immediately because it will have repercussions. If the civilian infrastructures are struck on the Iranian side and there is a reciprocal attack on our side, it will harm people on this side of the Gulf as well as the other side. We are communicating to all parties the same message. The civilian infrastructure should be out of this escalation and cannot be accepted. And we're communicating this not only to the parties of the conflict, but to every interlocutor we have in the international community. They need to stop this immediately. Regarding if the Iranians were ready to strike before this war. What we know is that there were no attacks on our sovereignty in the past year except for 2 attacks. One attack by Iran on the Qatari Al Udeid base, and one attack by Israel in the residential neighborhood very close to where we are right now. That is all a result of the escalation that was taking place already between all parties, and we have always, again, warned that escalation in the region left unchecked will lead to these kind of miscalculations and attacks, unprecedented attacks on our sovereignty, and we are seeing that happening right now. And finally, regarding the appointment of a new supreme leader in Iran, right now we are busy in defending our country from Iranian missiles, and we are not at the time of political niceties. And therefore, the concern right now is how to protect ourselves, our people, from the attacks that keep incoming to our country and have not stopped since the first day of this war. Yes.
Hello, sir. Thank you. I wanted to ask in regards
to... Introduce yourself first, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Leila Malana Allen from the PBS NewsHour. I wanted to ask in regards to U.S. bases, whether there has been, given the inference from the Iranian government that that's what they're targeting in the region, whether there's been any discussion between the Qatari leadership and the rest of leaders in the Gulf about whether the ongoing wisdom of continuing to host those U.S. bases, or whether that strategic partnership with the U.S. might change moving forward.
The strategic partnership, not only with the U.S., but all of our defense partners in the world, is not up for question. We have taken the decision to strategically ally ourselves in this way as part of a wider regional security framework. Obviously, the current conditions and the conditions of the past two years have or are leading us to strengthen our situation when it comes to international partnerships, when it comes to defense and security, but that has no bearing on the strategic positioning with the United States when it comes to security here in the region. I think it's very clear that right now, while our Patriot systems are defending the country alongside our American friends and allies and others from Europe and beyond, that these security partnerships are the main stopgap against any and deterrent against any attacks on our countries. Obviously, right now the question is, well, if they were a deterrent, then why are we being attacked right now? Well, this is the nature of the beast when it comes to international politics. When things go out of control, when conflict spirals out of control, the result is that deterrence does not work. This has happened every time in history, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have deterrence. It means that you should strengthen your deterrence. And this is exactly what we are doing right now.
Thank you very much. Axel here, Al Jazeera English. It was reported that Iran's Revolutionary Guard says European and Arab countries that expel U.S. and Israeli ambassadors would receive free passage through the Strait of Hormuz. How does Qatar see this statement?
No one in the world, including the Iranian foreign minister, has any say on Qatari sovereignty and who we choose to host in our country and what kind of diplomatic relationships we're going to have. Athena? كيفكم أتفهم.
شكرا دكتور بوسينة عبد الجليل.
Thank you, Doctor. Question from Qatar Radio. When it comes to the economy, we know the problem of energy. A force majeure has been declared by Qatar Energy. When can you think the production will resume? Second, the attacks against the GCC countries is a violation to diplomacy, and it will pave the way for a joint GCC efforts. Do you think that? Regarding the production, again, it's a technical decision by the concerned parties. But clearly, I would like to say that the production has been halted because of these attacks. These attacks are ongoing, and if they will continue, the production will continue, and we will not produce Now we have diplomatic efforts, and the GCC foreign ministers are having and making efforts. There is a great concern, a great coordination between the GCC members. This is also ongoing. You spoke about the statement that was supposed to be issued after the apology of the Iranian president regarding the attacks. Do you think this can be resumed, such communiques between the GCC countries? And what do you think this aggression will have impact on the region, because also the ceasefire is not being welcomed? Regarding the statement that we spoke about, it was in an interview with the Prime Minister of Foreign Affairs with Sky News. Yes, there was a work on such a statement after the apology of the Iranian president. But as said by the Prime Minister of Qatar, we were all feeling hope, but the statement of the president of Iran was not translated on the ground, and as if he has said nothing in this regard. Nothing has been applied on the ground. That's why we can't have such a statement. Before the stoppage of this unjustified attack on the region by the Islamic Republic of Iran, and this has nothing to do with the war between Israel, the United States from one side and Iran from the other side. So we're not part of this war. The Iranians are attacking our cities and our countries on a daily basis. When they stop, then we can think of a statement. But before that, there is no need to such a statement. Regarding those who refuse the ceasefire, it depends on the statements of the concerned parties. But as I said, every dispute will be sorted out, not by force, will be sorted out by diplomacy and talks and negotiations, and the consequences will be dangerous on all of us. A question from Sky News, Arabiya. Isa al-Marzougi from Sky News Arabiya. A question or two, please. Drzmelewski said in certain tweets that experts will be sent to the Gulf to oppose the drones. Are you planning to cooperate with the Ukrainian side in this regard? The American official said that the war might come to an end, but how did you evaluate this, and how was the evaluation of the American statement? Contacts are ongoing on a daily basis with the American officials regarding the whole situation in the region. His Highness the Emir received a phone call from the U.S. President Donald Trump. And regarding the American statements, you can ask them. We here deal with the circumstances on the ground. Regarding the Ukrainian thing, I have no comment on this matter.
Let's shall we, Mike?
Question from Sharqa. The French president says something about safeguarding the Strait of Hormuz, and can Qatar continue in such a case exporting? As said by the Qatar Energy statement, the halt of production was because the attacks on some facilities. The closure of the Strait of Hormuz is something else. When it comes to the Strait of Hormuz, we confirm our situation that halting and attacking the maritime routes is not something that we can accept. These things are very dangerous, and these straits are not only for oil, they are for oil, they are for foods, they are for production, And with the grace of Allah Almighty, we have other routes, but closing the Strait of Hormuz is a great threat to everyone. We will resort to diplomacy in order to sort out this problem, in order to avoid in the Arab Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz any escalation.
Thank you, Dr. Majid. Andrew Mills from Reuters. So just to clarify and build on that last question, you know, if the United States and France and others put together this naval escort scheme, that's not something that Qatar Energy and Qatar would be see as a viable solution to securing transiting the strait?
A viable solution would be stopping attacks against our facilities that produce energy. That's the first thing. The reason of the force majeure we have taken, along with the dangers to the Strait of Hormuz, is the attacks on our country right now that includes the facilities on energy production. طيب يعطيكم العافية. نلتقي إن شاء الله الأسبوع القادم.
All right, you've been listening to Qatar's foreign ministry spokesman and advisor to the Prime Minister, Majid al-Ansari. He's been giving an update on Qatar's stance in this regional conflict. And here to break it down with us is our diplomatic editor, James Bays, who joins me now on set. So, James, crucially, I think, Mr. Ansari mentioned that the ties between Qatar and Iran are not cut. The communication ties are not cut. But you could really feel the sort of exasperation at the situation, that they're in it in the first place and that it's continuing at this point.
Yeah, real exasperation about the situation, and I think below the surface, anger towards Iran for what they've done. He, for example, was asked about the new leadership in Tehran and Mujtaba Khamenei, the new supreme leader, and he said, well, defending our country is our concern, it's not a time for political niceties, i.e. he's not going to welcome or say anything about the new leader in Tehran. The focus for Qatar is very clear. It's been clear in every single public statement that they've made since the conflict started 11 days ago, and that is go back to the negotiation table. Diplomacy is the only way forward. That is their view with regard to this conflict. It's sort of the signature of this country because they've made such a name for themselves in the world of diplomacy, as Qatar is a haven for diplomacy, something, of course, that we saw most recently with regard to the war in Gaza. He was particularly concerned about attacks on vital infrastructure, things that he says sustain people's lives, and the attacks on the energy facilities in the Gulf, which he says are creating ripples all around the world and affecting the world. And I thought one of the most important quotes in that was, and it shows, again, exasperation is the right word, this is the biggest I told you so in the history of I told you so's. Qatar had said all along war was not the right option, conflict was not the right option, negotiation was the way forward. He said you could put a pin in a map anywhere in this region and you would currently see escalation. And he warned that if this continued, he used the word catastrophe.
And we've been seeing that. In fact, while we were listening to that press conference, the warning alerts went off on everybody's phone. Qatar now says it's intercepted a missile attack. So obviously that will not be well received either. But one of the other things he talked about in this was the strategic partnership, the security partnership that Qatar has with the U.S. and other nations that many people have questioned as this goes on. And as you said, because they lobbied so hard for this not to happen in the first place.
Yes, and he was very clear, the strategic partnerships are not up for question. So Qatar continues its partnership with the United States and with those other allies. Of course, some of those nations, for example, the UK, are currently flying with the Qatari Air Force over Doha and over the country to protect it from Iranian attack. Very much, though, that is what he wants to end right now. He was asked, for example, about convoys through the Straits of Hormuz that France might be planning. He didn't want to talk about that because he said that's not the answer. The answer is ending the war and ending the war right now.
And he mentioned that as well when he was talking about, as you were talking about, Qatar's role as a mediator, when he said our lines of communication are open, but there is no mediation from here. while attacks keep happening.
No, which begs the question, where would the mediation come from? I don't think we're going to have a scenario as we did last year where President Trump says the war ends and then that's it. Because Iran has said, well, we don't trust the US to say the war is over and to decide when the war is over, because we feel we've been duped twice before by the United States. There was active diplomacy going on 2 occasions, the Iranians say, and the Americans, in their view, used that as a ruse, which does suggest that there has to be some mechanism, potentially, of other countries getting involved. Could Qatar be involved? Could Oman, which has been the mediator in the past, be involved? Or could there be other players? There's some talk, and certainly came from the Iranian Deputy Foreign Minister a little earlier, that perhaps China and Russia and France are offering their services, big international powers, one of those on a different side from the other 2 in terms of their alignment. Is that the sort of mechanism that could come at the end of this? I think it's very, very early days to talk about that, because we only have that coming from one Iranian source. But there's going to need to be something to rebuild trust, because there is really no trust on either side right now.
All right, James Bays, our diplomatic editor. Thank you, as always. Iran's Revolutionary Guard has rejected comments by President Trump suggesting that the war will end soon. It has dismissed his comments as nonsense, saying that it's up to Iran to determine the end of the war. The exchange of words continues as people in Iran endure some of the most intense bombardments since the U.S. and Israel's attacks began. Emergency teams have been searching through the rubble of a residential building in Tehran. State media says about 40 people were killed in one attack. The U.S. president told members of his party that he is pleased with how the war is going.
Our country is doing really well. I mean, at a level that nobody thought. We took a little excursion because we felt we had to do that to get rid of some evil. And I think you'll see it's going to be a short-term excursion. How good is our military, right? Amazing. How good? Short-term. Short-term.
Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi spoke to U.S. media before Trump's address on Monday night. He told PBS that negotiations with Washington are off the table.
After 3 rounds of negotiation, and after the American team in the negotiation, said itself that we made a big progress, still they decided to attack us. So I don't think, talking with Americans anymore would be, on our agenda anymore.
We have correspondents covering developments from Washington, D.C., in southern Lebanon and in Ramallah. But first, let's go to the Iranian capital of Tehran and speak to Abbas Eslani, who is a senior research fellow at the Center for Middle East Strategic Studies. Abbas, thank you very much for being with us. Iran and the IRGC are staying defiant despite a continued bombardment overnight. What are we hearing from officials in Tehran right now?
Well, Iran defines this as a process that the opening salvo is not the most important section, but how it ends and the day after matters to a great extent. We heard from Iranian top military commander who runs the war saying that, that was the United States who initiated this aggression, but they will not be the ones to, end it. Iranian parliament speaker was speaking of Iran's perspective to this, and he was saying that the United States normally comes with a war, then asks for a ceasefire, then engages in negotiations, and then comes a renewed war against the country. So he was saying that the country needs to teach a lesson to the United States that they will break this cycle. And we have been hearing from also Iran's top security chief that he was reacting to Trump's threats, that Iran will not be intimidated by those threats from coming the American side, specifically at the time that the U.S. president has been warning about, attacking civilian infrastructure in the country in order to socialize the war and, increase the cost for Iranian government. But Iran doesn't seem to be engaging, let's say, in that diplomatic process, or let's say request for ceasefire, because it believes that, this could not end in a meaningful, let's say, resolution, because the U.S. again the other day will come with another attack against the country. So they need to somehow say that to change that deterrence in a way that there will not be, let's say, future aggression against the country.
Now, Abbas, just a few minutes ago, we were listening to the Qatari Foreign Ministry, and it expressed its frustration about the continued attacks on civilian infrastructure here by Iran. Now, I know that Iran is adamant that it is not attacking its neighbors, that it is only attacking U.S. targets and assets in the region, but clearly the Gulf states still do not see it that way. Is Iran willing to risk every relationship in this region?
Well, Iran has been complaining that the U.S. is trying to misuse the airspace and territory of regional countries, and even they have been using some non-military facilities in the regional countries to attack Iran. So that's why it is saying that it is responding to those places. In addition to that, Tehran's logic is that let's say, security partnership with the United States or inviting the U.S. to the region will not bring them security, but will further make the region more insecure. And in addition to that, Iran has been arguing that this is a shared destiny for whole the region. The other part of the region cannot live in peace and quiet while Iran being attacked from the backyard of other countries. So Tehran wants to say that this is against the American presence, as you said, and if this needs to stop, the American presence or its attacks against other countries, including Iran, must stop.
Abbas Eslani in Tehran, thank you very much for joining us today. Now let's go to Rosalind Jordan, who joins us live from Washington, D.C. Rosalind, we were actually also talking about, James Bays and I, about the message from the Qatari Foreign Ministry that said this is the biggest I told you so in the history of I told you so's. How difficult is it going to be going forward for the president trying to wind down this war and trying to keep this relationship with regional partners as they continue to decide their messaging?
I think it's a bit specious to suggest that U.S. President Donald Trump really cares what other countries think. I think that's the first point. I think the second point is that the president is listening mainly to his closest advisors, his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, his close friend and business partner and special envoy for peace missions, Steve Witkoff. He is listening to his Secretary of State / National Security Advisor, Marco Rubio. He's listening to his Defense Secretary, or War Secretary, as he likes to call himself, Pete Hegseth. It should be noted that Pete Hegseth and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane, will be briefing reporters in Washington in the next half hour about the 11th day of the U.S. air war on Iran. And the questions are going to be, how much longer will the U.S. military continue its active operations against Iranian targets? Now, it's not clear whether the Defense Secretary and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs are going to provide any more clarity about how much longer this war is going to take place. On Monday, as our viewers will recall, the president at first suggested that the war could be ending very soon. But when he spoke to reporters later in the day, he said that this could be continuing for at least another week until he is satisfied that the U.S.'s myriad of goals in dealing with Iran have been satisfied. So the real question is going to be, how much more active combat will there be? Will U.S. ground forces be deployed to Iran, if at all? What will be the terms of surrender? The president has talked before about wanting to see some sort of complete or ultimate surrender by the Iranian government. The president has also talked about his basic displeasure with the naming of a new supreme leader who happens to be the son of the late supreme leader, and his dissatisfaction with that political development. So there are still a lot of questions, especially given that as this war continues, there does seem to be more and more economic instability, not just here in the United States in the oil and gas markets, but globally as well, and then the spill-on effect to the global stock markets.
A lot of questions and a lot of really big questions, as you outlined there. Rosalind Jordan, live in Washington, D.C. Thank you, as always. Now let's go to Nida Ibrahim, who is live for us from Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. Nida, how are Israeli officials viewing President Trump's comments that this war might be, in fact, winding down?
Well, Riley, there's a lot of tension in Israel. There's a lot of worry that the war, according to the Israelis, would end prematurely. That means before Israel achieves the goals that it had set out to do, which is change their regime and eliminate what they say is Iran's existential threat. Now, they believe that while the U.S. has other interests to worry about, they think that they still need more time to achieve these goals. One issue that has been apparently a source of contention between the U.S. administration and Israel is Israel's attack on oil facilities in Tehran. And not only there are worries in the U.S. administration, according to media reports, that could drive energy prices up, but also it could prolong the war and it could drive the Iranians to lobby and to support their own regime, which is something that both the U.S. and Israel are not setting out to do. So you can sense this feeling of worry amongst Israelis and their analysis and their media, calling Trump's remarks conflicting. One time he says he wants to end the war soon, and one time he says he will continue if Iran continues to hold oil supplies in the Hormuz Strait. So there's this sense of fear that the situation that happened last June would repeat itself now with the U.S. deciding to end the war.
And Nida, there have been several rocket attacks across several areas in Israel. What more can you tell us about what's happening there?
Yeah, and sirens just sounded just a few minutes ago. And we're hearing sound that could be the sound of impact of some of them. When we talk about these missile strikes, we talk about Israel saying that it's intercepting many of them, but not all of them. And that raises worry and tension in Israel that the type of these cluster munitions being fired from Iran is worrying, because yesterday we've seen the killing of 2 Israelis as a result of these attacks. Also, there is this worry about the Hezbollah fired rockets that they believe there's one in particular that they believe Hezbollah has tens of that has the ability to travel very far. So we're talking about areas roughly around 100 kilometers, surface-to-surface missile that is yesterday hit crucial areas in Israel. We're talking about West Jerusalem, an area that is filled with military bases. As we always say, Israel does not disclose these locations or the damage that has been caused to these strategic facilities, but it is a point that is driving Israelis to say that they need to continue the war, not just in Iran, but also in Lebanon.
Nida Ibrahim, live for us in Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. Nida, thank you. And while those sirens are sounding in Israel, several new Iranian strikes have targeted the Gulf region as well. The UAE says it's dealing with a fire after a drone attack on its Ruwais industrial complex. Overnight in Bahrain, a residential tower was hit in the Sif district of the capital, Manama. Officials say a 29-year-old woman was killed and 8 people were injured. Qatar and Kuwait have also been intercepting missiles and drones. And Saudi Arabia's civil defense says a drone fell into a residential area in Zulfi, a city in Riyadh province. Israeli forces are also launching a series of attacks across southern Lebanon. The army says that it's targeting Hezbollah military infrastructure, and it warned residents south of the Litani River to leave. Israeli media are reporting that the military intends to expand its buffer zone along the Lebanese border beyond its current limit. The Lebanese government has called for direct talks with Israel to end the fighting. Al Jazeera's Zaina Hodder joins us now from the Lebanese coastal city of Sidon. Zaina, Israel continues to strike across the country, and there is a battle along the border. What can you tell us about the latest developments?
Well, the Israeli military, approximately 4 hours ago, warned that it's going to destroy at least 3 buildings here in Haret Saida. It is a neighborhood in the southern city of Saida. The buildings a few hundred meters in the distance. This forced people to leave the whole neighborhood. In fact, there's a school very close to those buildings, housing hundreds of displaced families, people who have been forced from their homes. And they're waiting in the streets, waiting for that strike to happen. It's now 4 hours since that warning was made. The Israeli military also issuing fresh warnings that it intends to target a number of neighborhoods in Beirut's southern suburbs, an area which is largely empty of residents. But across southern Lebanon, there have been multiple strikes over the past 24 hours, strikes that come without warning. It is clear what the Israeli military is trying to do is to gain the upper hand in an area close to the border as their troops try to make advances into Lebanese territory. But they are facing resistance from Hezbollah. Hezbollah saying that they're engaging in direct combat with Israeli troops as they try to advance in some border towns like Khayyam, like Aitarun. The Israeli military itself acknowledging that 2 of its soldiers were killed in recent days of fighting along the border. And the Israeli media reporting that Israel intends to expand its presence in southern Lebanon. So you have this, this ground, if you like, almost like an invasion, because what the Israeli military is trying to do is take additional territory in southern Lebanon. It has already controlled 10 square kilometers of territory over the past 2 years, despite a ceasefire.
But as all of that happens, Zaina, as you mentioned, all of these people are being told to leave and to go away from their homes and to find somewhere safer. It's hundreds of thousands of people who are on the move, who are being displaced. And the Lebanese government is now wanting direct talks. But is there any opening here really to end these hostilities?
700,000 people displaced, that's according to the government, and among them 200,000 children. Lebanon's president, Joseph Aoun, putting forward a diplomatic initiative, a 4-point initiative that involves direct negotiations with Israel under international mediation. This is something both Washington and Tel Aviv have been really demanding over the past recent months. Lebanon has come under a lot of diplomatic pressure, military pressure to agree to those direct negotiations. Now Lebanon says it's ready and willing to do that, but that offer has been met with silence. No comment from the U.S. administration, no comment from Israel. It is raising a lot of concern here that Israel is pushing for a military solution, an unconditional surrender, with Hezbollah remaining just as defiant, saying that it will continue to fight. It has no choice but to resist because the option that it is being given is not war or peace, but war or surrender.
Zaina Hodor, live for us in Lebanon. Zaina, thank you. Meanwhile, Lebanon's largest stadium has been transformed into a center to house displaced people. The government and aid groups are struggling to find enough shelter for the hundreds of thousands of people that have been forced to flee their homes. Bernard Smith reports from Beirut.
Lebanon's government is struggling to meet the demand for emergency shelter. This stadium is being converted into a mini tent city, but there aren't enough tents to meet the enormous demand. There are 800 people in here so far, including Marwa El-Shalak, who is heavily pregnant and can give birth at any moment, but their home's been totally destroyed and they've been left sheltering here.
We were staying in the southern suburbs. The strike started suddenly during the night, around 3 a.m. We took a car and went to central Beirut, and then some people brought us here to the sports city. Our situation is very difficult. I could give birth at any moment, and I'm very worried about how I'm supposed to stay in a tent in this kind of weather.
The UN estimates almost 700,000 people have been internally displaced, and most of them are living in either hotels, private rented accommodation, or staying with friends. And those that don't have those options, those that don't have the means to rent or pay for hotels, are in government shelters like this, and there is enormous need. And those that are here could be here now for many more weeks or even months to come. Bernard Smith, Al Jazeera, Beirut.
At least 3 U.S. warplanes have arrived at a British airbase in the wake of the conflict in the Middle East. The UK's Ministry of Defence says the U.S. has started using British bases for, quote, specific defensive operations against Iran. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer initially refused access to his country's bases. U.S. President Donald Trump has criticized Starmer for that decision. After days of rapid increases in oil prices, there has been some reprieve after Trump's comments on ending the war. But let's take a look at just how volatile the market has been. Brent crude, the most traded type of oil, surged past the $100 mark at its peak, but has now dropped down to about $88 a barrel. West Texas Intermediate, or WTI, is the other benchmark. It broke through $100 on Monday before coming down to about $90 a barrel. Global markets have also shown signs of rebounding. European stock markets recovered as energy prices eased, with increases of more than 1.4% reported from Paris, London, and Frankfurt. Stocks in China and Hong Kong have also bounced back from their lowest levels since December and August. Jack Barton reports from Seoul.
U.S. President Donald Trump's suggestion that the war could, in his words, be over soon was enough to send stock markets across Asia surging, with South Korea's Kospi rising more than 6% so quickly that buying was temporarily suspended. The upside of a stock market roller coaster that also saw selling suspended on Monday after the Kospi fell 8%. The turbulence underlines the region's dependence on Middle East oil and gas and petrochemicals, essential for everything from farm fertilizer to skin cream and plastic goods. South Korea imports almost all its energy needs, so is particularly vulnerable to price shocks, which translate to the consumer as inflation. The South Korean government has been working to stabilize the markets with a special fund created at the start of the conflict. But the markets are really just the bellwether for trouble in the broader economy. Analysts here say real stability will require a resumption of reliable imports from the Middle East, which will require real peace, not just statements of reassurance. Jack Barton, Al Jazeera, Seoul.
Thousands of Afghans living in Iran are fleeing across the border because of the attacks by the U.S. and Israel. According to the UN, between 3 and 5 million Afghans live in Iran. Around 2,000 are crossing the border every day to seek safety. Many of them have been repeatedly displaced by decades of conflict, violence, and poverty. Arafat Jamal is a representative of the UN's refugee agency in Afghanistan. He says there are no good choices for Afghans deciding whether to stay in Iran.
What we've seen is about 110,000 have crossed over this year. What I would say is that they're reporting that they are fleeing the conditions of war that all people inside Iran are experiencing. They are not at this point highlighting any specific concerns for Afghans. However, what we're witnessing here is a lot of tension and apprehension. This is just the beginning, and the repercussions of this conflict are being felt throughout the region. Of course, for these people, there are no good choices. They're fleeing one war and coming to another, because I'm sure your viewers remember that we here in Afghanistan are experiencing a second war, a war that predated the one in Iran between Pakistan and Afghanistan. So they're fleeing one conflict and entering another one at the moment. This is coming on the back of a mass movement of people last year. Last year, the movement of Afghans back to Afghanistan, 2.8 million, was the largest such movement globally. So now, as we start this year, it's picking up again, and we are seeing refugees, we are seeing migrants, we are seeing passport holders, and so on. And at the moment, it seems to be more of a preemptive move. People are describing bombs on them, a great deal of fear, but they're also describing a dysfunctional economy where these people who filled in many of the different slots in the labor market are unable to find jobs.
Let's take a look at some of the day's other news now. Madagascar's president has dismissed his prime minister and the government without giving a reason. Michael Randrianarina came to power in October after youth-led demonstrations forced the previous president from office. Those same protest groups have recently called for greater inclusion in Madagascar's political transition. When he took power, Irina had pledged to organize elections within 2 years. In Gaza, Israeli artillery shelling has been reported in Khan Yunis and the center of the Strip. Palestinian officials say at least 6 people have been killed in Israeli strikes, including 3 children and a journalist. Some of the attacks hit makeshift shelters housing displaced families. More than 640 Palestinians have been killed since the ceasefire came into effect in October. A corruption trial has begun for Istanbul's jailed mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu. He was arrested in March of last year after being named the main opposition challenger to Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. İmamoğlu's supporters and human rights groups say the case is politically motivated. Prosecutors are seeking a prison sentence that could exceed 2,400 years. China is facing a major demographic shift. Marriage rates are falling, birth rates are at record lows, and more people are choosing to live alone. As leaders gather for the annual National People's Congress, the changing structure of Chinese households is becoming a growing concern. Katrina Yu has more from Beijing.
For generations in China, it was common for several members of one family to live under the same roof. But Beijing resident Cecily Huang is part of a growing group. They're young, urban, and living alone. Single-person households now account for around 1 in 5 homes in China.
I think our generation of women are more educated, capable, and economically independent, so we have the ability to live alone.
Living alone doesn't always mean being isolated. Cecily has an active social life and travels frequently. She's proud of her independence, but for the Chinese government, the trend presents a challenge. Fewer marriages and births mean fewer workers paying into the social welfare system as the elderly population continues to grow. By 2035, the number of people aged 60 and over is expected to exceed 450 million, roughly 1/3 of the population. That would give China one of the highest proportions of elderly people anywhere in the world. Finding ways to slow population decline and manage its consequences is high on the agenda at this year's National People's Congress. Last year, Beijing rolled out a nationwide childcare subsidy and announced plans to make childbirth free under state insurance. Some provinces have gone even further, offering cash incentives for new parents. But many experts say the measures don't come close to offsetting the cost of raising a child, especially in major cities. Cecily says she didn't plan to live alone, but prefers it to being in a relationship just due to financial or social pressures.
Our parent generation just focus on to being a partner with each other to survive. But I think our demand or our lifestyle is not just survive. It's more about having a lifestyle we want to, because China is not poor anymore. And now you have your own space and you can really explore more about yourself.
If the right partner comes along, Cecily says her situation could change. Until then, she's content to go her own way. Katrina Yu, Al Jazeera, Beijing.
I'm Cyril Vanier, and you're watching Al Jazeera's continuing coverage of the conflict between the U.S., Israel, and Iran. Devastation in Iran after one of the heaviest nights of attacks by the U.S. and Israel. State media says more than 40 people were killed in a single strike in the capital, Tehran. Donald Trump says the war may wrap up, quote, very soon. But Iran's Revolutionary Guard dismisses those remarks, saying it is up to them when the conflict ends. Thousands of Afghan refugees are displaced again as they flee Iran for Afghanistan. Global oil prices ease and share markets rise on hopes that the war will end quickly. Saudi Arabia's oil giant Aramco warns of catastrophic consequences if it doesn't. Iran's Revolutionary Guard has rejected comments by President Trump suggesting that the war might end soon. It has dismissed his comments as nonsense, saying it is up to Iran to determine the end of the war. The exchange of words continues as people in Iran endured some of the most intense bombardment since the U.S. and Israel's attacks began. Emergency teams have been searching through the rubble of a residential building in Tehran. That's what it looked like. State media says about 40 people were killed in one attack. The U.S. president told members of his party that he is pleased with how the war is going.
Our country is doing really well. I mean, at a level that nobody thought. We took a little excursion because we felt we had to do that to get rid of some evil. And I think you'll see it's going to be a short-term excursion. How good is our military, right? Amazing. How good? Short-term. Short-term.
Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi spoke to U.S. media before Trump's address on Monday night, and he told PBS that negotiations with Washington right now are off the table.
After 3 rounds of negotiation, and after the American team in the negotiation, said itself that we made a big progress, still they decided to attack us. So I don't think, talking with Americans anymore would be, on our agenda anymore.
We are live in Washington, D.C., Ramallah, southern Lebanon, Doha, and from a British airbase in southern England. We'll start with Patty Culhane, who's in Washington. I understand that the U.S. Defense Secretary is speaking live. Let's go to that.
Warriors and steadfast allies, good morning. As someone who led troops, led soldiers in the streets of Baghdad and Samarra, Iraq, and who trained counterinsurgents in Kabul, Afghanistan, and who still carries the weight of brothers lost to Iranian terrorist proxies, many backed by the same Iranian regime we're confronting now. This fight, Operation Epic Fury, it hits home. Our generation understands this fight. For 47 years, these barbaric savages in the Iranian regime have murdered our brothers in arms, my guys, your guys, our guys, through their terrorist proxies and cowardly attacks. Now they race toward a nuclear bomb to hold the world hostage. The Iranians have targeted and killed thousands of my American brothers. That race to a nuclear bomb, President Trump will never allow it. Not now, not ever, not on our watch. The mullahs are desperate and scrambling. Like the terrorist cowards they are, they fire missiles from schools and hospitals, deliberately targeting innocents, because they know their military is being systematically degraded and annihilated. Iran's neighbors, and in some cases, former allies in the Gulf, they've abandoned them. And their proxies, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and Hamas, either broken, ineffective, or on the sidelines. Iran stands alone, and they are badly losing. On day 10 of Operation Epic Fury, we are winning with an overwhelming and unrelenting focus on our objectives, which are the same as the day I gave my first briefing here on Operation Epic Fury. They're straightforward, and we are executing them with ruthless precision. 1, destroy their missile stockpiles, their missile launchers, and their defense industrial base, missiles and their ability to make them. 2, destroy their navy. And 3, permanently deny Iran nuclear weapons forever. It's a laser-focused, maximum authority mission delivered with overwhelming and unrelenting precision. No hesitation, no half measures. As President Trump declared yesterday, we're crushing the enemy in an overwhelming display of technical skill and military force. We will not relent until the enemy is totally and decisively defeated. But we do so on our timeline and at our choosing. For example, today will be yet again our most intense day of strikes inside Iran. The most fighters, the most bombers, the most strikes, intelligence more refined and better than ever. So that's on one hand. On the other hand, The last 24 hours have seen Iran fire the lowest number of missiles they've been capable of firing yet. Just the bifurcation, just the trend lines that we talked about on our first briefing. You see, this is not 2003. This is not endless nation building under those types of quagmires we saw under Bush or Obama. It's not even close. Our generation of soldier will not let that happen again, and nor will this president, who very clearly ran against those kinds of never-ending, nebulously scoped missions. Those days are dead. Instead, we're winning decisively with brutal efficiency, total air dominance, and an unbreakable will to accomplish the president's objectives on our timeline. We stay locked on the target because here at the Department of War, that's our job. Now, the chairman and I, having just returned from Dover last night, our troops and their families and the enormous sacrifice that they make is certainly heavy on my mind. So I'll close with scripture, drawing strength from Psalm 144. Blessed be the Lord, my rock, who trains my hands for war and my fingers for battle. He is my loving God and my fortress, my stronghold and my deliverer, my shield, in whom I take refuge. May the Lord grant unyielding strength and refuge to our warriors, unbreakable protection to them and our homeland, and total victory over those who seek to harm them. And amen. God bless our troops and this mission. Mr. Chairman, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. I'm here today to continue the updates to the American people and to those in the room on Operation Epic Fury. First, let me start with honoring our fallen. As the Secretary said, on Saturday and again last night at Dover Air Force Base in Delaware, our nation's leaders honored our returning fallen as they arrived home for their final time. Last week, I shared a few of the names, and today I want to share the rest. Major Jeffrey O'Brien and Chief Warrant Officer 3 Robert Marzan were the final two fallen to return home, and members of the U.S. Army Reserve's 103rd Sustainment Command out of Des Moines, Iowa. Last night, as the news has been reporting, we honored the return of Staff Sergeant Benjamin Pennington of the U.S. Army's 1st Space Brigade from Fort Carson, Colorado. When I met Ben's family last night, his mom, his dad, and his sister, they showed me a picture, a drawing that Ben had made when he was in kindergarten. It was clear all the way back then that Ben wanted to do one thing in his life, and he wanted to serve his country and be a soldier. And to the Penningtons, just know how Ben was absolutely a great one. And finally, Major Sorfleet Davies, who returned home this weekend after sadly passing away from a medical condition while on duty in Kuwait. We welcome him home as well and mourn with his family. To the families and the families of all of our fallen, we share in your profound grief. The Joint Force remains eternally grateful for your sacrifice and the gift of a great example that your service members have given all of us. I want you to know that their names will never be forgotten, and you and your family are part of our Joint Force family forever. Let me talk a little bit about the progress thus far, acknowledging that Admiral Cooper will likely continue to give updates from CENTCOM. As the Secretary said, we're in the 10th, moving into the 11th day of Operation Epic Fury. The Joint Force remains focused on 3 military objectives: continue to destroy Iranian ballistic missiles and drone capability in order to prevent attacks on the U.S. and others throughout the region. And this means attacking launch sites, command and control nodes, stockpiles before they can threaten our personnel, our facilities, and our partners. Second, we continue to strike the Iranian Navy and their capabilities in order to do things like sustain movement through the Straits of Hormuz. And third, we continue to start working on and going deeper into Iran's military and industrial base in order to prevent the regime from being able to attack Americans, our interests, and our partners for years to come and project power outside their borders. This means servicing production facilities, research and development sites, and infrastructure. Let me turn to the map. We're going to try digital today to prevent laser injury. Since our last update, CENTCOM continues to make progress across the southern flank. To date, they've struck more than 5,000 targets. U.S. Strategic Command bombers recently dropped dozens of 2,000-pound GPS penetrating weapons on deeply buried missile launchers across the southern flank. We also have struck several one-way drone factories to get at the heart of their autonomous capability. And of course, alongside our regional partners along the southern flank, continue to execute intercepts against one-way attack drones using fighters and attack helicopters. Our strikes mean we've made significant progress in reducing the number of missile and drone attacks out of Iran. Ballistic missile attacks continue to trend downward, 90% from where they've started, and one-way attack drones have decreased 83% since the beginning of the operation. A testament to our air defenders and our air defense systems, and as I said, our partners in the region continue to do great work as well. Second, we're making substantial progress towards destroying the Navy. In the first 10 days of the conflict, we're more than 50 Iranian naval ships into the campaign using a combination of artillery, fighters, bombers, and sea-launched missiles. As Admiral Cooper noted last Thursday, we struck and sank an Iranian drone carrier ship, and U.S. CENTCOM continues today to hunt and strike mine-laying vessels and mine storage facilities. This work will continue. Third, against our objectives, we've begun to target Iran's military and industrial complex, again, focusing on centers of gravity to get upstream of the shooters out in the field in order to deny them the ability to continue to generate those one-way attack drones. Let me spend a minute talking about the joint force. Across the area of responsibility, this is gritty and tireless work, and I cannot begin to explain how incredibly proud I am of the extraordinary courage, tenacity, and grit and professionalism within the joint force. Last time I had a chance to talk about the Army's incredible logisticians who are out there sustaining the fight. Today, I want to highlight a few groups of sailors. First, I want to thank the men and women of the Ford Carrier Strike Group and their families, and let all of them know how grateful I am for their leadership and service. The crews on board this strike group have already been endured months at sea only to get their deployment extended. These exceptional Americans, rogered up, all supported by their families, continue to stand the watch, taking the fight to the enemy over and over again, night after night. Aboard ships like the USS Ford and the Abraham Lincoln are a special group of sailors I want to highlight today. These are the men and women, the sailors up on the roof running operations on the flight deck. With an average age of the early 20s, these are the unsung heroes of naval aviation. These young sailors, known for wearing yellow shirts, are in charge of the catapults, taxiing jets around on the flight deck, shooting jets off the front end, and recovering jets off the back end. They are literally involved with every single movement on the roof on an aircraft carrier. They are the last ones that a naval aviator sees before getting shot off the front end, and the first one that a naval aviator sees after safely trapping on the back end. And just for a minute, imagine you're standing on that aircraft carrier flight deck. There's 30 knots of wind in your face. The deck is slippery, covered in grease. It's noisy. There are propellers spinning. There's jet blast everywhere. The helicopters are running. Your head is on a swivel, and you're trying to direct a multi-million-dollar fighter into a 1-foot square box so that those naval aviators can be shot off into the black of night to go do America's work. Those jets are fully loaded
Reporting this. Appreciate. Can you detail the specific measures the Pentagon is taking to minimize civilian casualties and strikes inside Iran? And secondarily, is the Pentagon prioritizing replenishment of precision-guided munitions, long-range strike weapons, or air defense interceptors? And can you share any details on which systems are being prioritized?
Yeah, seeing it from the inside every single day, including this, no nation